Hello guys, MonkeyBot here. So we have the new blog for us today, which is the Thrones of Decay Tamicon edition. I just want to quickly say I'm suffering from a cold at the moment, so I have one of the blessings of Nurgle. So if I sound a little bit nasally or a little bit groggy, apologies in advance. I hope it's not too uncomfortable to listen to. But having said that, we have our first blog here. I've already read through it, so I kind of know what to expect here. I need to maybe read through a couple of things again to get myself up to date on these things, but what I've read so far, it's sounding really good. It talks about all of the units, the strengths that these units have. It talks about the individual campaign mechanics that will be coming for Tamicon, as well as the reworked campaign mechanics that go for the Nurgle faction as a whole. So that being said, let's get straight into the first section here. This is basically an introduction of what I've just said, what's coming in this blog, and it says that you still aren't able to purchase the DLC until they have shown off everything that is coming in the DLC. So first thing that we need to talk about is Tamicon, the Maggot Lord. So Tamicon is basically a beast. He is a massive hulking tank that hits like a truck. Imagine the exalted heroes of Nurgle that we already have in game that already have this little nickname as a mini legendary lord. Tamicon is going to be the strongest melee character I think in the game at this point. So he is a complete tank, as I said. The combined durability of an ogre infested with a corpse maggot of Nurgle makes this legendary lord tough to kill. So he is an utter tank, probably massive HP pull. He's a hard hitter, so wielding an axe with great bullish strength. This unit hits especially hard with high armor piercing damage. So yeah, he's an armor piercing weapon strength god. He's probably going to be one of the strongest duelists in the game. And then he has his unique mount here, which is his toe dragon, which he can have to aid in combat and traversal, probably turning him into a massive anti-infantry beast. It talks about the toe dragon later on in the blog, and it mentions that it is the most expensive unit that Nurgle has to offer, so I can see it being alongside a Dreadsaurian for Nurgle. So that's great. And then it talks about briefly his unique campaign mechanic, which is Tamicon's Chieftains, a unique campaign mechanic focused on recruiting the strongest warriors around and earning their fealty to achieve ultimate victory. So moving straight on to that, which is Tamicon's Chieftains, which is his unique campaign mechanic, which is used throughout his campaign. So he can recruit and hire certain legendary heroes, including Khazak the Befouled, which is the new legendary hero for both Kugath and Tamicon, as well as a few other pseudo-legendary heroes along the way. So you've got a generic Warrior of Chaos unit, you've then got a Famir, you've also got a Skaven by the looks of it, a Beastmen, and then a Chaos Dwarf. So you have something called Dominance, which is a unique resource to Tamicon, and you can use this resource to recruit certain units and these legendary heroes to your faction that you can use to plow your way through the Mountains of Morn and start getting your strengths up, ready to siege Nuln and take victory. So you use this dominance, like I said, to recruit these units and to recruit these legendary heroes, which you can then add to any one of your armies within your faction. The other unique campaign resource we have is fealty. So fealty is related to the legendary heroes individually. So you need to basically do things that they like. So it says down here that if Tamicon seeks a devoted chieftain from the Chaos Dwarfs, it best express the same hatred for Skaven as they do. So if you do things that these specific warlords like, they will like you more. You will get stronger items, stronger buffs, stronger units, stronger benefits, and everything that comes with those individual legendary heroes. So that's basically that campaign mechanic in a nutshell. You gain dominance by winning battles, recruit legendary lords, and then you make them happy and you get the benefits from them. And now we're moving on to the legendary hero, so Khazrak the Befouled. So this legendary hero, I believe, is available for both Kugath and Tamicon. So Khazrak the Befouled is a cavalry legendary hero, so he rides on top of a rock beast. These are some really heavy cavalry. Think of them very similar to maybe Seekers or Skull Crushers, you know, that really heavy thing for Nurgle. They're quite slow, they hit like a truck. For Khazrak specifically, they also have regeneration. So he regenerates health in combat thanks to his Corrupted Flesh passive ability. And he also gives decreased melee defense and armor for those that he is attacking, allowing him to be a great supportive character. He also gives bonus to speed while stripping the enemy of their charge defense versus large attribute. So you don't need to worry about spearmen or hellbirds. You just charge right in there and their charge defense is completely gone and you can just plow through those units as needed. So moving on, we have the Chaos Lord of Nurgle. So this is going to be your Lord variant. The Lord variant is equipped with a sword and shield, so it's going to be a lot tankier than the Exalted Hero of Nurgle, which is quite terrifying to be honest, because the Exalted Hero is already extremely tanky. It's probably going to lose the majority of its armor piercing, but gain a silver shield, making him more resistant to missile damage. He has a nice ability here. So his Rot and Die ability is very good at spreading leadership, but it also gives melee damage reflection bonuses to the units around him. This is really good if you are going up against some really strong melee infantry on the enemy team, say some Great Swords for the Empire, Sword Masters of Hoeth, or Khorne Chosen. If you start placing this damage reflection onto your own Nurgle units, a lot of that damage is going to go back to the enemy, really playing into the hands of Nurgle's strengths here. He also has a very nice ability which gives him extra armor piercing damage for a sword and board character, bear in mind, and he also reduces the melee attack of nearby foes. I'm guessing this is in an Aurora, but it doesn't actually specify that here. Moving on, we have the Chaos Sorcerer of Nurgle. This is very basic, there's nothing really to say here, it's just the Chaos Sorcerer of Nurgle, so now you have access to Nurgle magic in a hero slot. But it doesn't really say that there's anything unique here. It just has the Law of Death and the Law of Nurgle attached to this. I think this is going to be a lot more important for the Warriors of Chaos, giving them access to the Law of Death and the Law of Nurgle within a hero slot, allowing you to have healing, for example, in Archaon's army or Coalex's army, to giving you access to a really powerful Law of Magic. I think that's the more important thing here. So moving on to the actual core units that we're going to be getting in this DLC, the first is the Pestigore. So what makes the Pestigore unique to other Gore units and the Zangors is that they have a great weapon, so they're going to have great armor piercing damage early on. They are going to have a much higher health pool, which is the standard for Nurgle. They are also going to have poison, which is also standard for Nurgle. But they're also going to have a unique ability called the Tears of Nurgle, which is a passive chain hex, so it's going to link to units, to enemy units close by. And what it does is it slows the speed of those units, allowing other units, including the Pestigores themselves, to catch up and deal damage to them. That's it. It's great. It's going to be a really low to mid-tier armor-piercing unit, which you don't get many armor-piercing units early on in the campaign, other than the Marauders. So having something a little bit faster than that is great. I think it's going to be a great unit. Nothing much to say. It's just going to be a basic low to mid-tier unit that you're going to get early on in the game. Moving on, we have the Plague Ogres. Now, I really like what they've done with the Plague Ogres. They're going to have the standard stuff. They're going to have poison. They're going to have higher HP pools. But what they have done, which is, I think, is so important for Nurgle, is that they've actually made the Plague Ogres anti-large. Nurgle doesn't have a single unit at the moment that has the anti-large trait in the entire roster. So Plague Ogres are going to be the first here. It's very well needed. Nurgle definitely struggles with big monsters. They struggle with dragons. They struggle with dinosaurs. They struggle with all of those big single entity monsters from other factions. And I think the Plague Ogres are going to be one of the answers. We're going to get another answer to large units down in the video here, but Plague Ogres I think are a very good answer to that. Nothing else special about them. Higher HP pool, anti-large. That's it. That's all you need to know about them. Next, you've got the Rot Knights. Now, these are, like I said earlier, are going to be your really heavy cavalry units. So very similar to the legendary hero that we're getting, it's also going to have regen. It's also going to provide anti-large attacks. So it's got regeneration, so it can regen its health outside of combat. That does make it weak to flame. And it's also got the anti-large trait. This is really good. He can now compete with enemy cavalry like Empire Knights and things like that, because they do struggle against other cavalry units at the moment. And the regen is just so good for a mobile unit. Yes, it is going to be heavy cavalry, so it's not going to be super quick. It's probably going to have like 65-70 speed range here. But even having that speed with the regeneration is great. they're going to just stay on the battlefield for so long if you just micro them correctly. Moving on, we have the Bile Trolls. These are probably going to be the most elite trolls that we're going to be getting in Total War Warhammer 3 altogether. There's nothing too much unique about them. They just have higher HP pools. They've got armor piercing. There is a hex that's attached to them that will reduce their melee defense, making them easier to kill. So they're a little bit like I was saying in a previous video, they're the combination of river trolls and stone trolls. They are really tanky, and they also provide massive debuffs to the enemy. They probably still have their low leadership. They have their classic regeneration. They have their classic Nurgle poison. Nothing much to say here. I do think they are really good. They are going to be really good hard-hitting units for Nurgle. Now, moving on, we have the highlight for Nurgle, which is the Toad Dragon. So the Toad Dragon, as I mentioned previously, is going to be one of the most expensive units in the Nurgle roster. It's going to be big. It's going to be powerful. It doesn't mention that it's anti-infantry, but it probably will have an anti-infantry armor-piercing trait. But what is really important here is that it's got a massive missile resistance. Even missiles won't take this thing down very easily. It's going to have a huge health pool because it's Nurgle. It's going to have poison because it's Nurgle. And it's going to be resistant to missiles. And if it's anti-infantry on top of that, which is what I'm predicting, or it's good at taking out infantry units, even things like Hellbirds are going to struggle against this thing. This thing is going to be a beast. And just to add on top of it, it's also got a breath attack. It's got a poisonous venom breath attack that sprays all over enemy units. This thing is a jack of all trades. It's going to be so good. It's got no weaknesses. It's going to be a beast to take down. And it's going to be one of your strongest units in the game. And I'm very, very looking forward to using this unit. So now we are moving on to the Nurgle rework. So this is coming in patch 5.0, whether you buy the Thrones of Decay DLC or not. This will be affecting Kugath Plaguefather, Festus the Leech Lord, Tamicon, and Epidemius, which for some reason they're keeping a secret, but we've all seen it in the trailer. So this is going to be affecting all 4 of the Nurgle factions. So the first thing that's going to be changing are the plagues and how the symptoms work within these plagues. So plagues symptoms now exist within a web with certain symptoms connected to each other, letting you combine 3 of them to create a plague. So you pick a first system and then you go to any of the directions that it's connected via the web. You pick the second symptom and then you go via the web again to pick the third symptom. The UX has been redesigned to better showcase how this plague will affect both Nurgle and non-Nurgle factions, positive for Nurgle and negative for everyone else. This is great. All the symptoms now have positive and negative effects, whether you are a Nurgle faction or not. Some of the symptoms in the current patch don't do anything to some other factions. For example, there's one that gives growth to Nurgle settlements but doesn't do anything to anyone else. It's a little bit weird. So now that all of the symptoms have both a positive and negative effect based on what faction you are is great. The symptom locations within the plague will shift every 3 plagues. So the first plague may allow for a connection between symptoms granting casualty replenishment, growth and recruitment health, but on the next cycle these symptoms could be nowhere near each other and you'll have to conjure new plagues from what's available to you. This is great. This is much more thematic for Nurgle. Nurgle is about experimenting with different symptoms, different plagues, and seeing what he can create to overcome the world. So having this randomness is good. This makes it very difficult to create a meta, I guess, because in the current patch, everyone tends to go for the same symptoms, same plagues over and over again of what's optimal. Now you don't have a choice in that. You're going to get some really good plagues here and there. You're going to get some bad plagues here and there, but you have to work with what you've got. I think this is a good change. I like it. I think all of the symptoms are already stronger as a whole. So making every symptom stronger, but at the same time randomizing it a little bit kind of balances it out. So I think it will be in a good place. We are also introducing a new type of symptom, which is a blessed symptom. These symptoms are basically the same symptoms as you normally would get, but they have double the effect. So if your casualty replenishment rate is at 20%, this blessed symptom will now buff it up to 40%, for example. Again, the blessed symptom will change every 3 plagues, so it's random on which effects will be doubled. Plagues now have an immunity period so that those receiving the plagues cannot instantly be infected again. So this is great if you are going up against a Nurgle faction as a non-Nurgle faction. You know that you're not going to be receiving these plagues constantly. They are going to be immune for a period of time before you'll get infected with another plague. So now there's a rework for Nurgle's construction within his faction. They're still going to keep the cycle system, but they are changing it slightly. So military buildings are still cycles, but all remaining buildings are now static like other factions in the game. So this is mainly the infrastructure buildings that are changing. You're going to have to pay for them at tier 1, then upgrade them to tier 2 and upgrade them to tier 3 by normal means. Military buildings now cost infections instead of treasury. So this is the big change here. So this is to help managing the choice between improving infrastructure and recruiting forces. I think in the current patch, everyone always went for military buildings. It gave you the most amount of income and it would give you your units. No one would, for me personally, I would never go for infrastructure. But now the infrastructure and military buildings cost a different currency, I think it now incentivizes us to mix it up a little bit, go for the infrastructure buildings as well as the military ones. We have done an economy pass on the buildings following this change to help Nurgle's difficult finance situations, allowing players to choose the treasury building rather than having their economy gains split between all chains. So yes, income is, because the infrastructure is more static, the income is now going to be a lot more consistent now. This is good. There's no problem with that. Nurgle's treasury was always a big problem. It was so inconsistent. One turn you'll have about 10,000 income with about 3 armies, and then suddenly you're minus 20 grand a turn because you can't afford your armies. It was a horrible system. But now they are making it more consistent, so you can still afford those armies even though the military buildings are still cycling around, giving you more units. Cult buildings are undergoing an effect pass. I guess this means they're just tweaking how they work slightly. The remaining cycle buildings can now be rushed by spending infections. So if you want to get to the next tier of the cycle building, you can spend more infections to get there faster, rather than waiting 2 or 3 turns to get to the next cycle. That's great. That means you can cycle around faster, get those stronger units, and start recruiting more Great Unclean Ones, Chosen, Toad Dragons, whatever you need at the higher tier. I think this is a great change. Having infections now be used in your military, not just your plagues, is great. I don't have any problems with that whatsoever. So there is a small change on how recruitment works now. You still recruit in the same way as you do in the live patch, as you will recruit instantly on that turn but receive a small percentage of HP to that unit. But now it's affected by the level of Nurgle corruption that is in the territory you're recruiting in. So you get 30% HP at 0% corruption. And then you get 60% HP and minus 50% recruitment costs at 100% corruption. So you get more troops and they are cheaper the more corruption that is in that territory. That's great. It just buffs up corruption a little bit, makes Nurgle corruption a little bit more worth pushing. You want your Nurgle corruption on the front lines because you want to recruit those units on the front lines for cheaper and at a higher HP. This is great. No problems with that. Moving on to the technology tree. So Nurgle's technology tree is being changed slightly. They admitted that it was designed too heavily around Kugath's Realm of Chaos experience, which we all knew. It was so obvious, but at least that they have acknowledged that and they're now changing it. Nurgle's technology tree is now split into 2 distinct groups, one focused on military and other focused on campaign faction bonuses. The layout has been reworked to make it clearer and easier to progress through the technology tree. Great. It's hard to say if this is going to be good or bad until we get our hands on the technology tree and we actually see what's happening. Now, there's one last change here, and it's actually how the army ability works. So they are changing it so in the current patch, the more damage your units took, the quicker you would build up your meter to get your fecundities and the Rot Glorious Rot ability to start using your army abilities in your battle. But they are changing that now. So you will now passively gain points to those abilities by debuffing your enemy. So this includes poison. So if you are poisoning your enemy, which is basically just being in melee combat, so for every debuff that is being activated on the enemy army, you will passively gain points to get those abilities. That's great. That means you'll probably get these a lot easier, especially when you're in steamrolling battles. You don't want to take damage. Nurgle can take damage, but that doesn't necessarily mean you should take damage. So changing this so you are debuffing the enemies to get these points is great. I don't see a problem with that. I think it's a really good change. It means you are likely to use these abilities more often. And then finally, it just talks about what's coming next. We will likely get a Let's Play video tomorrow of Tamicon showcasing him in game, and then next week we'll be seeing Elspeth and then Malachi Mackinson the following week after that. And that's it. That's the Nurgle changes. The only thing that's left to see is proper Tamicon gameplay and his start location, and that's it. We know everything that's coming into the Thrones of Decay DLC for the Nurgle side of things. So let me know on your thoughts on these changes. I think these are really good changes. Everything that's being introduced here was desperately needed for Nurgle, and I'm really happy with what they've done. It's difficult to say if it's going to work. We have to wait until we get in game and see how it all plays out. But so far, it's looking really good. A lot of the problems have been covered. So yes, let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye for now.